2, 1, and live. Joe, I'm so happy to talk with you. Where are you now in this moment? Where do you live?
Well, right at this moment, we're back at the origins in Bolton in Lancashire, and we don't really live here. This is sort of a destination place where we keep lots of things here, but we move around a lot. We've just come back from Dubai. We are probably going back there again. In fact, we spent a few days, 2 weeks almost in London. And then at some point during early next year, we'll be off to America. So where do we live? Oh, in between, we're off to Bangkok, middle of this month, hopefully, because Julie's daughter lives in Bangkok. So if COVID allowing us, we will be in Bangkok for Christmas.
Got it. So you've been traveling a lot, busy to go around. Yeah, actually, COVID is crazy. I mean, I got the email yesterday from NHS for the third dose that you can book now the third dose, and everyone's scared about this Omicron, the new variant. But so I hope it won't be locked down. Otherwise, it would be annoying. And you've been busy with this new book. I wonder if I've interviewed, Matthew McConaughey, the actor, the American actor, Matthew McConaughey.
Yes.
And it was interesting because when I interviewed him, he came out with this book, and he was like in a desert to write the book for 2 months, something like that. So I wonder, how long did it take for you to write the book, first of all?
Oh, much longer than 2 months. It took me about 5 years. I started it 7 years ago when I started. It took about 5 years, mainly because I didn't have any notes or anything. I had to remember it. And when you start putting things down, you start writing, the memories come back, and you think, but I was also doing this. So the most difficult part was the chronology, just to get it in the right order. And I had about 5 different drafts before eventually we got the one which then we could go to a publisher, and from going to a publisher, it took about 2 years to get that onto the market, and that happened 12 months ago. In fact, it was October 2020. We were published.
How was the writing? Because I mean, I think I wrote 3 books or something like that. And I'm very bad. I'm like horrible. I can't write. I realize that. I can do videos, but I cannot write. So I always need help from ghost writers, the publisher, saying, guys, I mean, just please correct my Italian is I can't really write. Did you discover yourself as a good writer, or how do you work?
No, I'm not like you. I say I'm a shoemaker, but I'm not a good shoemaker. If you've read the book, you see that I'm not a good shoemaker. I probably eventually ended up as a marketing man, so maybe marketing, but in the footwear industry. And being a writer, no, I had my story, and I say I had at least 5 drafts, and then I got a guy to read it, and he coloured it in. So he just had that little bit of colour, which helps, because as you know, if you've written 3 books, you need it to read nicely and a page turner. So he managed to do that for me. So yeah, but have you read the book, by the way?
No, I never read the book before to do the interview, because I want to discover the book. Otherwise, it's like I watch the movie and then you tell me how the movie is. So I'm always interested to know the story firsthand, and then I read the book. That's my new philosophy now for 6 years, and I love it. Otherwise, I already know everything, and I don't like it. So that's how I start.
A book can only tell you so much, and what I find, we're doing this now with London Business School and the University College of London, UCL, with their MBA students. And the guy does read the book, but then he can ask questions digging in to the book. I say, why did you do that? So I find that, okay, if you haven't read it, you can ask me questions, not a problem. But the people who do read it ask different questions. And, so there is a different angle to that. And those different questions, particularly for sort of MBA students, because they learn about how to run a business. You do it this way, but it's a very structured way, and it's historic. But when you're talking about, you have to go out there and build a business, you can't just do it by the book. There has to be something outside of the box that you do. So Either way, it's very interesting. But carry on. You asked me about my book then.
Yeah, you know what, Joe? I'm for 20 years now. I do startups in the digital sector,
Right.
and what I realize is that, of course, I mean, and I studied law, by the way. That was something interesting for me because I started with a completely different sector. I was thinking about being a lawyer in Italy. And then
Right.
I end up being an entrepreneur doing, I don't know, apps and publishing industry. And now, I don't know, the educational sector, crypto war. I mean, I'm doing a lot of different things where
Yeah.
I don't really have a knowledge about, but I have to bring together people. I have maybe a vision of the direction, but I'm not, technically able to do maybe a lot of different things. I feel always the most ignorant in the room. But for some reason, you get the idea and you bring the right people, you get the investors in, and you say, all right, let's go, and we try to do it. So is this approach, that you learn by doing? And I was wondering if when you started, it was a bit like same like this for you or not.
Well, Jeff and I started our business in 1958, which is a long time ago. The reason we went into business is because the family business, J.W. Foster, was J.W. Foster and Sons then, it was originated by my grandfather in 1895. And he was the guy who invented the spike running shoe, or at least he pioneered the spike running shoe. His grandfather repaired he was a cobbler, repairing shoes. He also repaired cricket boots. And cricket boots in those days, in the late 19th century, they had spikes in the bottom. My grandfather saw this, and he was a member of a local running club. So he thought, if I put spikes in the bottom of a shoe, will this help me? Will it give me grip? And indeed it did. It gave him that extra grip. So that's where that business started from. 1895. By 1904, my grandfather had 3 world records in his shoes already. And then he had a lot of gold medals in the 1920s. He made the shoes for the athletes that were immortalized in Chariots of Fire. I don't know if you know the film Chariots of Fire, but that was Eric Liddell, Harold Abrahams, and Lord Burleigh. They all won gold medals in the 1920s. And this film, Chariots of Fire, it immortalizes them. So my grandfather had a really good business. Unfortunately, I mean, in those days, it was pure performance. Nowadays, Reebok, we're fashion companies now. We're on the street, fashion companies. So we have changed that quite a lot. But he knew how to influence. He died, though, in 1933. I was born in 1935. I was born on his birthday, the 18th of May, 15 months after he died. So there's a bit of coincidence there. My grandmother was totally insistent that I brought my name with me. So I became Joe Foster. He was Joe Foster. I became Joe Foster. And this was in 1935. 4 years later, we had World War II. So 6 years of war, and I was 10 by the time that was over. The lights come on again, and we all start living again and education. By the time I'm 17, I've done college, and I start to work at J.W. Foster and Sons. They're athletic shoemakers. So that's the business that I'm in. 1 year later, my brother and myself, Jeff was 2 years older than me, but we both went to do national service at the same time. Okay. Jeff went to Germany and he saw Adidas and Puma. And we came back after 2 years to the J.W. Foster company, and we found a failing company. They were not moving on. My father and uncle, they just didn't get on together. A bit like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler. Rudy Dassler left and set up Puma. The Foster family kept working, well, they weren't working together, but they didn't leave, didn't separate. We tried our best to get them to change, get my father to set up a different company, but he wouldn't. So Jeff and I, in 1950, we left.
Sorry, Joe, to interrupt you. Well, why do you think that it didn't work? It was just chained to the old way of making shoes. Why was it not working?
Different various reasons. There were 6 years between them. They were quite a bit different in age. Why, and even to this day, I don't know why, but they just didn't get on together. And, you know, what caused the rift, I don't know. And whilst my grandmother was alive, she could keep them together. But when she died, that was it. They just didn't speak to each other. And, you know, I don't know. They'd gone through 2 world wars. You know, they'd gone through World War One and World War Two. Maybe they'd lost that the energy to feel that, you know, we've managed to get ourselves through 2 world wars. What we're just living our time out now and just making the same shoes we had made forever. Because when Jeff and I came back from doing national service, the company was still making the same shoes they were making in the 1930s, 1940s, and here we are in 1950s, still making the same shoes. And Adidas across the water there, and Puma, they'd changed the game. And
Right.
And our father and uncle, they didn't even see it. They were just.
What did Adidas and Puma change? What was the key change that you think they did in that moment?
I think Adidas and Puma, they came out, they saw what was on offer, and I'm pretty sure that Adidas bought a number of Foster's shoes and looked at them and played with them, and thought, well, we can make these a little lighter, a little different, because the Foster shoes really they were sort of I think they called themselves the world's largest athletic shoe, hand-sewn athletic shoe manufacturer. Hand-sewn is fine, but one person can only produce 2 or 3 pairs a day, hand-sewn.
All right.
You know, so what they had to do was to look at how to do this with machinery and use different techniques to make a shoe as light and as supple as a hand-sewn shoe. But they had to use machinery. So they changed that. Plus it's like, like Ford making his cars. You can have any color, but it's black. Providing it's
Yeah.
black, you have any color. And that was a bit the same in the sports shoes. They were black with a lizard skin support, and those shoes hardly ever changed. Only when Adidas brought in some red shoes, some white shoes, that's the only thing that Foster's picked up on. And they did change a bit of color, but they didn't move the company forward. So the company was actually losing out to the likes of Adidas and Puma.
Okay, so you come back, you see the situation, failing company, and what you and your brother decided to do. By the way, Joe, in that moment, what kind of education you had apart from the like experience? I imagine in hands-on, but did you have some sort of formal education? Did you study for?
Oh yeah, we had formal education, and I went to college. I studied engineering.
Okay.
So I did 2 years in engineering, which was very helpful. But really, it makes you think a bit more than just sort of a normal sort of primary and secondary sort of education where you learn a bit of the academics, but beyond that, you don't really learn much practical. So, I'd probably, well, I was probably sort of questioning what was going on at Foster's. You know, even during my 1 year there before going to national service, it's, you know, what are we doing? But nobody wanted to listen. And certainly when we came back, they just didn't want to listen.
Okay. And what did you do then?
Well, Jeff and I, you know, we knew because we were on the factory floor, so we knew how to make running shoes. So we went to college to learn a lot more about footwear, and you know, being in sports footwear, your business is a sports trade, but you're learning your skills are learned in the shoe trade. So we were in the footwear industry and also in the sports industry. So it was a matter of going. We went to college. Fortunately, we had a college something like 15 miles away from where the factory was, and from Bolton up in Rossendale. And the big advantage that we got from that is that we made a lot of friends. We got a lot of information. How do you make a last? How do you make a pattern? Where are the materials available? What sort of machinery can you get? So we learned a lot more, and we learned that more than we learned how to make shoes, because what we needed to do was really find out the access the industry. And so it took us about 3 years. We tried so much to get the family to see what we wanted, but they wouldn't. And so 3 years later, we had set up a very small factory 6 miles away.
Okay.
In the next town, and it was on that Friday night that I told my father we're leaving, because, you know, this won't work. And you know, my father kept on saying, "Look, when your uncle Bill has gone and I have gone, this factory, you can do what you want. It's going to be yours. And I used to say, well, number one, Dad, we don't want you to go. That's not the plan. The plan isn't for you to go. But this company will be dead before you can think about it. It's going. And in fact, 18 months later, it really did, after we'd left, it only took 18 months before the factory. Well, my uncle died. And once he had died, half of the business, it just didn't work. So my father just decided to pack it in, and that was it. End of story.
So you were right in that moment. But how was setting up your own company? I mean, because if you study on as an engineer, did you already have some entrepreneurial instinct? Because one thing is doing shoes, another thing is doing a business. So how did you find yourself in that situation?
Well, we were young. We were indestructible. Yeah, what can go wrong?
A lot of it.
What can go wrong? Nothing. and so I think if you know too much, you don't do it. You get too scared because this can go wrong, that can go wrong. With us, we were young. We'd just done national service, and here we were now. Opportunity. Why not? I'm 23. Jeff was 25. Let's do it. And we did. We just set off there, and we knew where to buy the machinery from. We got it very cheap. We could set it up. I knew enough about electricity to make sure that the machines would work, and so everything we did. And there was a little bit of excitement about progress, because nothing worse than being in a business, J.W. Foster's, where you're very frustrated. You can't do anything. It's annoying. So just to get away from that was something that, okay, this was it. This is the beginning. And those first few steps, fine. We were great. Okay, we bumped into a few problems. We set up our company as Mercury Sports Footwear. That was our original name. Okay. And as you know, that's not Reebok.
Yeah.
And so and that came 18 months after our start, because we were doing nicely. We had nice business. We were advertising. We were getting orders, and our accountant said, "You're doing very well, but you're going to have to register your name." Right. And I'm looking at him and saying, "Why? What's all that about?" Well, he said, "There's Mercury. If somebody else thinks that that's a nice name and they like the way that product's going, they start making Mercury shoes as well, you're going to have a problem, because you're going to need to tell them that, oh, whoa, that's my name. But unless you've got it registered, you're going to be fighting a court case." Okay, so what do we do? Well, you register your name. How? Well, you go and see this guy. He was a patent agent. Patent agents do all sorts of things for you. And so we asked him to register Mercury. And he came back about 3-4 days later and said, "Sorry, guys, it's already pre-registered. Lotus and Delta, which was part of British Shoe Corporation, they had it registered." Oh. He said that you can buy it off them. They'll sell it to you for £1,000. And we just set up a factory for £250. We didn't have £1,000. It was like impossible. And I went to Manchester to see the guy. I said, "Look, no chance. We can't. We don't have £1,000. So he said, "Okay, well, you'll have to change your name." And he said, "And we'll have to test those with the register." And he said, "So bring me 10 names." 10 names? Look, this has got to be our business. We've got to be in love with this. It's got to be our passion. 10 names. Yeah, 10 names. He said, because if you bring me one and we test it and that doesn't work, we're going to be spending months going to the registrar.
Right.
So bring me 10. Let's push 10 in. And okay, so we go back and we sit down around the table. Don't know if you've done this, thinking of different names. Cougar. Oh, that's a good name. Cougar. Yeah, good name. Falcon. Another good name. Falcon. Fine. Let me take you back now. I'm going to take you back now to 1943. I'm 8 years old. World War II. We're right in the middle of it. Just like COVID, we couldn't travel. The seaside holidays, they were out. No, everything was stay at home. And so we had these local events in Bolton. And I won a 60-yard race. In those days, everything was in yards, not meters. We'll say a 60-meter race for the
Yeah,
sake of
that's a good point.
And I won that, right? Fantastic. I had a bit of an advantage because I had spike running shoes. And spike running shoes in 1943 were a bit special. Not many people in Bolton had a pair of spike running shoes. So maybe I had a bit of an advantage, but forget that. I won the race. And I go up to collect my prize. Okay, so what do I get? I get a dictionary.
Right.
And I'm 8 years old, and I'm saying to the guy, "Where's the football?" You know, I can't kick a dictionary. I suppose you can kick a dictionary around, but doesn't behave like a ball. So I've got a dictionary, and that's it's an American dictionary as well, a Webster's American Dictionary, and the American spellings are somewhat different than the English spellings on certain words. So it probably would have been a bit useless to me. I had sort of been taking that to school. Fortunately, in those days, we didn't have school. We had a few lessons in a few different places. But now, fast forward, 1960. We're thinking of names. Okay. I have my dictionary there. It's sat behind me. And I like the letter
Still
R.
the same. I mean, still the same dictionary that you won. It's still the same.
Absolutely. Same dictionary.
Right.
Everyone is sat there. And I like the letter R. So I get my dictionary and I open the dictionary to R. Then I start thumbing through. And it's not long before I come to R, E, E, B, or K. Reebok. What's that? And it's a small South African gazelle. A gazelle. Wow. We're a running company. Gazelle. Fantastic. Reebok. Top of the list. So all the 10 names that we got, I went back to my patent agent with Reebok at the top. And I said to the guy, look, I said, I don't care about these others. This is the one we want, Reebok. And the patent agent said, well, it's up to the register. If it's not registered, fine. I said, we got to be in love with it. It's got to be our passion. Anyway, it took him about 3 or 4 days, and he came back. He said, well, the only one that came clear was Reebok. It's the only one. The others had some sort of problems. He could have probably registered 1 or 2 of them, but Reebok completely clear. Apart from one, the registrar has one caveat on that, and that is that if somebody starts making shoes out of Reebok skin, you can't stop them. These would be
Right.
Reebok. Yeah. And Jeff and I, we looked at each other and I said, no, that's never going to happen. No, forget that. So we registered Reebok. And that's
Crazy story. And sorry, Joe, and what about the logo? Did you register also the logo when you trademarked the name, or was after the trademark?
Well, when we were Mercury, we had the winged messenger. The winged messenger, Mercury, he was our logo. But let me finish talking about the name. Because the registrar said, we're going to have to put you in part B of the register because of the fact that somebody could make shoes out of Reebok skin. Right. 20 years later, he came back to us and said, we've moved you to the A section. Why? He said, well, everybody now knows that Reebok is a shoe. And the animal is certainly secondary to you being a shoe. So they moved us up. Fantastic. Now, you would need to see some of the stuff that we've produced. We have a nice big book which shows the progression towards towards our logo. And because Reebok's the name, fine, and there's so many people saying, well, you need a deer or an antelope or a gazelle. Why is that not your logo? A bit like Puma, they had the animal. Even Tiger had the face of a tiger. That's Onitsuka now at Asics. And didn't really fancy that. I don't know whether it's because my drawing wasn't very good, so I didn't make a good drawing of an antelope or a springbok or whatever. So over the years, we came up. Well, actually, what really made our logo or started our logo was that 4 years into our business, we got a letter from Adidas.
Right.
Because our silhouette had 2 stripes and a T-bar. And they said that 2 stripes and a T-bar was an infringement on their 3 stripes. And of course, you receive that letter, you open it, and you think, oh my God, what's this? And we stood there for about 5 minutes thinking, what do you do? And we're smiling. Adidas know we're here. Yeah. Adidas know we've arrived. And I don't know whether they're worried or not, but certainly they're feeling enough sort of not
Some
pressure,
pressure there.
but enough need to tell us don't do that. Again, only a few minutes, and we that letter went on the wall. We pinned that up, and it stayed there for ages. But all we did was we changed our silhouette. So we changed it to what we see now, which is the vector. You can see it at the back, and that was like an arrow. So now I had an arrow on the side of the shoe. I thought, well, I can probably use that. That's the marks, the silhouette you can see on the book. But I thought I'd use the arrow, and if I put two together, we've got the direction, and that's fine. Because I tried putting an R on the shoe, but when you put an R on it, it works on. I think it works on the left shoe, but doesn't work on the right shoe. And because back to front. So with all these things I'm playing with in my head, so I end up with these two arrows that sort of work, and you can turn those upside down, so it worked on both sides. Then I'm thinking, well, I could maybe make it maybe sort of do something different. So I made it into a circle and put it'd be 8 arrows all the way around it, something like that. I think it's 8 arrows. So it was that, and then I filled in 2 of the arrows so that they're lit up, and that still today is our star crest. That is still on the tongue of every shoe, every classic shoe we make. You know, that's there, and so that became our logo. But it progressed. It progressed. I think we must have gone through maybe 4 or 5 years of progression from different ways of writing the name, and eventually we end up with Mototectura, and that's which has that dropped R for the Reebok. So we ended as our lettering, and it took some time. Of course, we go up to 2005. I had left the company by then when Adidas bought it, and I don't know why, but when they owning a company, they seemed as though they felt it necessary to change things, you know. And if you're a marketeer, if you're in marketing, you recognize you don't change things. You know, if it isn't broken, why fix it?
Yeah.
So they changed it, and they came up with a Delta. And they changed the lettering, very similar lettering to Adidas. And of course, it was disastrous. Yeah, it just did not work.
Yeah, you lose completely the identity of a brand that you built.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's 5 years ago now, about 5 years ago, they took on a new marketing manager. And I think the marketing manager looked at it and said, why? Why have you done that? Turn it back. So they went straight back to what we had way back, and they got the Reebok and the Mototectura, and that now is putting life back into the brand again.
Yeah, and it's the logo is back and the brand is back. Joe, go back 1 second. When you started, did you immediately think about like building a global company, or you were focused on, let's say, local market? Let's try to be good here. What was the initial vision?
Well, initially it was we have to get away from J.W. Foster's because this company is going down. So we have to find ourselves a living. We have to say, what are we going to do for the rest of our lives? So it's step at a time. We set up a company. Fine, that's going well. That's okay. And then you get the next step, where, you know, well, how can we improve our business? You know, should we move in? We started with cycle shoes, then we moved to athletic shoes, and it's a question of saying, well, you know, we have a nice company, but if you don't progress forward, we'd be like Foster's. We would stop. We would plateau and probably fail. So it was always a matter of well, what's next? Work. How can we improve our business? And Jeff loved to work in the factory. He loved it, absolutely loved it. And so he would say to me, Joe, I'll look after the factory. You do everything else. And everything else meant that there was a lot of stuff that needed doing, and but we never had a crossword. You know, where my father and uncle, they were always fighting. Jeff and I never did. He looked after the factory, I looked after everything else, and I'm sure I did a lot of things bad. I'm sure I did a lot of wrong things, but he just let me get on with it. Providing he had orders and he had a factory that could work, he was happy. So, oh yeah, so I did everything else. It meant, I was doing a lot of things, which, I I decided that I would try and increase our sales by going on the road in a car, being a rep, and we're calling on sports shops. Because those days, every town had about 3 small sports shops, usually run by an ex-footballer or
Right.
somebody who had made the name in sport. So I would go around and I'm taking my product here. This is Reebok, and most of them would look at me and say, "Who? Reebok, right? What do you do?" Oh, show them the shoes. Oh, nice shoes, yeah, nice shoes. And then they'd sort of say, "Look, I've got Adidas and I've got Dunlop. Why do I need Reebok?" That was the question. Why do I need Reebok? And that struck me as saying, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because they don't need me. They've got other
Right.
brands. So that was it. My days on the road trying to sell are gone. But we used to go to athletics meetings and cross country and road meetings, and we used to sell from the back of the car, from the boot direct to. And it occurred to me, wow, these are my customers. They're the ones that I need to convince to buy Reebok. Fine. And we had it was wonderful. There was in those days, going back, the 3As, the Amateur Athletic Association, produced a handbook. And that handbook had about 300, 400 names and addresses of every club in the country. So I
see.
got the name and address of the secretary of every club in the country. Well, a letter. So I wrote to everybody, offering them a discount, 15%. And if anybody in the club wanted to be an agent for Reebok, they could have the 15%. Fantastic. I got, from that first letter, I had over 100 agents. All of a
Oh,
sudden,
wow.
yeah, all of a sudden, I'm selling direct to almost every athletic club in the country. And my second letter brought another 50 agents. So I was growing agent. Then I was getting telephone calls from these retailers, these sports shops. They said, "You're selling direct, look, I can sell you shoes, to the, but you're going to have to stop selling direct to the athlete." And I thought a short while, I thought a bit about it. I thought, no, look, we can give you wholesale prices. These guys are only getting 15% off.
I see.
You could give them 15% off at wholesale price. So I'm quite happy to supply you at wholesale, but I'm not stopping direct selling. About 75% of the sports shops that rang me accepted that, and we built a nice business in that way. But we're talking about athletics. In those days, not a big business. It was nice, and what had happened with me going direct to the athletes, we became the athlete's shoe. We became the choice of shoe because we were very close to them. We listened to them, and we developed shoes for them. So we became very close. So we had a lot of persuasion, I'd say, and we were doing very well. And we were the #1 athletic shoe company at that time. But I thought, we need to look at a bigger business, and a bigger business in America. In
Right.
America, coach was a king in every university and college. Coach was big. You could go to university on a sports scholarship. In the UK, mainly to get to university, it was academic. You had to do an academic route. But in America, no. And say, coach was big. So how do I get to America? Well,
I want to hear that. How did you go to America?
how do you go to America? I can even go back to Foster's, because a guy called, there's Jane Jack and Frank Ryan. They were head coaches at Yale University. And Frank Ryan had heard about Foster's and started doing some business. So he was buying Foster about 200 pairs a month. He was taken into Yale University, and they were reselling them to universities in America. So I knew a bit about the business.
Okay.
So how do I get to America? Well, the family didn't like the idea of me spending that sort of money going to America and, well, playing around, I suppose they might have thought, just to get, maybe a trip to America. However, I'm reading a magazine, Eurosport. And in this magazine, there's an advertisement from the British government. And the British government wants us to export. Okay. And they said, look, we will pay for a stand at the NSGA show in Chicago. The NSGA show is the National Sporting Goods of America, and that's in Chicago in February, and that's a different story. But we'll pay for that. We'll pay for your return airfare, and we'll pay for half of your hotel expenses whilst you're there.
Okay.
Well, cheaper than staying at home, isn't it? You know, like, wow. So I got a friend who was in the outdoor business, and I said, Bob, do you want to look at this? You know, I fancy a trip to America. So yes, we went. We actually dropped off initially in New York and had a look at the stores in New York. He went to the outdoor stores. I went to the sports stores, and yeah, saw what was going on. On to Chicago. Chicago in February. Freezing. It's cold. You know, you really know it's cold when you go to Chicago in February. However, great, fine. We're at the show. Everybody loves the shoes. Great, like your shoes. Where do I get them from? England. England. Is that New England? No. Not New England.
England.
Is it? England. Oh, is that near London? Yes. That's near London. And fine. But I did get the message. The message was, we need somebody who here in America will stock the shoes, and then we can buy them from there. They were not into importing from across the water. This is 1968. I do get into America. When? 1979. 11 years later. It took 11 years of continuing to push, try, efforts, and I had 6 failed attempts.
Why 11 years, Joe? It was like bureaucracy, it was the legislation, it was the competition that tried to block. Why it took so long?
Well, I mean, there is an element of bureaucracy, because everybody has import duties and paperwork and stuff like that, even into America, and that makes it difficult. And you've got to have everything's got to be stamped made in England or wherever your origins. So there's a lot of bureaucracy. But the biggest problem was the fact that financing it. You need the money. You need the money to be able to buy the product, to sell the product, to be able to wait for 30 days and so on. And also to, in those days, we would probably need to give a few pairs of shoes to top athletes. We had some good athletes. Frank Shorter actually bought a pair of shoes. I don't know if you probably won't remember Frank Shorter, or Bill Rogers. They both bought shoes from us, but we're going back quite a bit for those days. And so the good thing that was happening, though, in America, the really good thing, late in the 60s, running became a big category, or started.
Got it.
And by 1975, running was massive. Out of, say, 350 million Americans, 10% were running. So 35 million were putting the shoes on, going out, doing a 5K, a 10K, training. And so that market grew massively. And with it, and possibly part of the reason it growing, was this magazine called Runner's World. Runner's World started off as a single A4 page. But by 1975, it's 50, 100 pages, and it's color. And it tells everybody who won such a race, where the next 10Ks were, where the next half marathons were. So everybody who was running would buy this. And excuse me.
No worries. I was curious about one thing before you keep going. You saw the opportunity, of course, and then after 11 years, you entered the US market. I was wondering what Adidas was doing in the meantime, because I think also they saw the opportunity, for instance, the running world or something like that, or they didn't see, and you were just alone, and you could move alone in the space.
Well, it is funny, really, but I think they had quite an advantage. And whilst I'm trying, they had at least 6 operating distributors in different regions. They had 6 different people. In fact, one of them during my time, he'd been pushed out by Adidas, and Clifford Severn. He also tried, but we failed. I think it's a question of how much support you could give. You know, because at that time Adidas was much bigger. And I say they had an advantage because Adidas were in the American zone of Germany, And so you got a lot of Americans there. And the Americans love the sport. So they wanted to buy sports shoes. And Adidas were there to do it. They were making sports shoes for them. And of course, these Americans, once they'd done the national service, they went back to America. And they were taking these shoes with them. So in a way, Adidas had a bit of an advantage because the Americans doing it. But they were a much bigger company as well. Even by the time Jeff and I had started, Adidas had taken the football or soccer market that some people want to go. They'd taken the football market in the UK. For us to get into that would have been too expensive. We didn't have the cash to buy our way in, which you needed to do. It's getting in there was a very expensive thing. So Adidas were already in America, and they were doing reasonably well. So we weren't looking at Adidas or Nike or anybody. We were looking at that white space.
Right.
We needed somewhere to take our brand, and as I say, 35 million Americans were probably running. But this magazine, the guy who the publisher, he decided he could tell everybody which was the #1 shoe, because he'd grown so big with this. And so he came up with, this is the #1 shoe. And I think it was a Nike. I don't know if it was a Tailwind, something like that. This is the #1 shoe. Well, if you've got 35 million Americans running, 10% wanted that shoe. 3.5 million wanted to get that shoe. But we're talking about Nike now, and Nike, Phil Knight was importing his shoes from Japan. To get them to turn up the wick to produce those, the demand was incredible. And of course, by the time he managed to get the production coming in, Bob Anderson, who was the publisher of Runner's World, he decided that, oh, we've had 12 months now, we'll have another shoe as #1.
Oh, I see.
So you can imagine what the retail trade were thinking. Yeah, they were just getting the shoes in, and all of a sudden they come up with another #1. So that didn't last long, because I'm sure the retail trade said, look, you're just killing our business, because the shoes that are coming in now we don't want. We want the new one, which you're not going to get for 12 months. Oh. So he changed it to star ratings. So instead of telling someone this is the #1 shoe, he changed it to 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star.
And was it an independent, like, reviews? He tried to do an independent reviews. Was like a good journalist or good, expert giving a review, or it was like there was a bit of pressure there?
Well, they seemed to put together a bit of a team that would test shoes, some different machinery and whatever. and they came up with whatever they thought was 5 stars. The thing is that we were well aware of the business. You know, we knew where we were going on this. We weren't just making shoes. We were into the business, and I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. Making a #1, that's a bit too risky, a bit too chancy. But I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. And in 1978, we tested out our 5-star shoe, Aztec. In fact, we produced the gold range, and the gold range was a trainer, Aztec. It was a racing shoe, a road racing shoe, Midas, and a track spike, Inca. So this was our gold range, and we did very well at the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton. We got a shed load of gold medals and whatever. So we had this shoe, and so we're talking about now February 1979. I go back to the NSGA show, and I'm showing off what I say is going to be our 5-star shoe. And Kmart came along. Kmart, a big retailer in America, all the way across America. And they wanted 25,000 pairs.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That was my comment as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a happy problem. Let's say that, Joe.
Well, it is, because that would have been 6 months' work for our small factory in the UK. However, I knew, if we got a 5-star rating, the demand would just be beyond us. So I had a friend at Bata. Don't know if you've heard of Bata. They shoemakers to the world. They were the biggest shoemakers in the world at that time, but they made regular street shoes. And a friend of mine had gone to their working for them, and he was producing the sports range. So he said, "Look, we'll help you. You know, we can do that. It's fine." And in fact, they actually did produce the first 20,000 pairs of shoes that we sent to America. But then came out and said, "But we need a better price."
Mm.
Mm. That means going to South Korea. It means certainly going to Asia.
Right.
Again, I'd already made contacts with people in Asia because I knew that the shoe market was going there. It had been going there for at least 10, 15 years, slowly moving over to the East. And they can make the same shoe. They can make my shoe at less than half the price I could make it,
Wow.
which is a lot. So I knew we had to do that. But I'd already got contact with the agents in the UK for a big factory in Korea. So we got the angles covered. At Kmart, 25,000 pairs. And then along came a guy called Paul Fireman. And Paul Fireman, he was running an operation, Boston Camping, which they sold tents, fishing rods, you name it. And I like Paul. We could get on right from the beginning, but I could tell he was a bit fed up of the outdoor business that he was in. They'd probably been doing this for about 10 years, just selling the same things, tents, fishing rods, you name it, ground sheets. And he wanted to change. And he said, "Joe, I'd love to be your agent." "Okay, Paul, what do you need?" "I need a 5-star shoe." I said, "Come and have a look at our Aztec. This is going to be a 5-star shoe." "Yeah," but he said, "but you know, it's going to be is one thing. You know, we need it to be a 5-star." And the shoe issue didn't come out until August. We're now in February, and the shoe issue comes out in August. So fine, okay then. So we sort of leave it at that. But I go over to America and visit Kmart, and I'm thinking, yeah, you know, this operation, they may want 25,000 pairs, but it could be my first and last order, because
Right.
they're not interested in. They're interested in if they can sell a product, and they'll give me so many square meters. And if it doesn't come up to the profitability of that,
And then they'll send you back if they don't sell.
that's right. Yeah, but the end of story. But then I went along to Boston to see Paul Fireman and his brother. His brother and his brother-in-law were running the operation. So the Steve, and that was his brother. His brother-in-law, forget his name now. But they were running this nice operation. Okay, I thought, well, you know, they have a bit of money. They have they have access to distribution. This could be a nice company to bolt onto. This could work for us. And Paul actually came across to the UK during that period, and we took him to races. We took him to different places, and of course, we only took him where we knew there was a lot of Reebok shoes, and the winner would be winning in Reebok. And I'm sure that that Paul knew we were doing that, but I think he was just happy to see the fact that there's plenty of Reebok shoes out. So fair enough. Okay, so we're now at the last week in July of 1979, and the magazine comes out the week before the month it's due.
Oh.
I phoned Paul up on the last week in July and said, "Paul, can you get down to the local kiosk and buy a Runner's World? You know, because the result will be in there, and that will be it." An hour later, Paul came back. He said, "Joe, fantastic, Aztec, 5 stars. Wow. Yeah, that was the difference. I had been pushing. And now this was the hook. This was now going to draw us in." But he said, not only Aztec, he said, your Inca and Midas also got 5 stars in their own categories. So we went into the market with 3 5-star shoes. And Paul, he was ready. He wanted to go. So that was
incredible. But Joe, first I was thinking while you were telling this story, you have to turn this book in a movie, of course, because I mean there are so many things, and I'm looking for, you know, what's next, what's next. But we still have 10 minutes, and I have so many things to ask you. We next time we have to talk for 7 hours only to complete the first week. But incredible, the power of a magazine like Runner's World in those days. I mean,
absolutely, yeah,
incredible.
Absolutely powerful. But you know, the Americans love that sort of thing. You know, the Americans love to read and to buy the product, and that really started us going in America. But you know, that wasn't our story.
All right. That's fantastic. So what do you think? I mean, that was a pivotal moment anyway, because I mean, you started there in US, and what was if you think about? I mean, there is no one moment, but if you think about a moment in time that you thought, okay, now everything is changing. Now we are going on a different level. When was it?
Well, that was it. When we got 5 stars,
Okay.
I knew that we had an entry into a market of 350 million people, and that meant probably 35 million were actually out there as a potential customer. And if we could grab a few of those, that would be fine. But you know, we're doing great. And Paul had reps and everything going on, and he had a technical rep down in Los Angeles. And a technical rep goes in, meets all the staff, and shows them the benefits of the shoe. This is good. This is good. So that when they're selling it, or somebody comes in, they'll sell it. And that technical rep was called Angel Martinez, or Angel, if you want, Angel Martinez. And his wife was she was going to aerobic classes, and she was coming back and with her friends, and they were really full of it. Fantastic, great. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "We're doing aerobics." He said, "Well, what's that?" And she said, "Well, we're actually exercising to music." Oh, he said, "Well, can I come and have a look at this, because it sounds to be really exciting." Oh, you'll love it. Next time he went down, and he saw the instructor in a pair of sneakers, and half the class also in the same sneakers. The other half, they were in no shoes at all.
All right.
Okay, and this was his light bulb moment. Wow, why don't we make a shoe just for aerobics, and not just for aerobics for women? Just make it for women. Make it on a woman's last. Right? So, okay, the idea is there. Off he goes. LA to Boston, takes the red eye flight, gets down there in Boston, goes to see Paul Fireman, and tells Paul all about this. Paul, this fabulous stuff called aerobics. You know, the women, they love it. They were really enjoying it. And Paul said, whoa, slow down. You know, come on, Arnold. You know, we're a running company, and we're doing very nicely. So what do we want to do? Why do we want to make dancing shoes? And Arnold is sort of saying, well, you know, no. If it starts to grow, if there's something there, okay, we'll think about adding that on. Anyway, Arnold wasn't put off. He went round to the back door, and round to the back door, the production guy, Steve Liggett. He must have made a good impression on Steve Liggett, because he said, "Steve, I need 200 pairs. I need to get some, make it in glove leather, cushioned, all white, just a Reebok name on." Okay. He got his shoes, and he took them back down to LA, and gave them out to the instructors and a few of the leading girls who were doing this aerobics, and that was it. That was the whole thing just exploded, because the girls, not only did they love the shoes for aerobics, they just went to work in them. They went everywhere in the Reebok. The problem is they were made out of glove leather, and out of glove leather, they fell apart after about a month.
Right.
Now, the fact is, the girls loved them so much that they just went out and bought another pair. Had that been in any other country, I think Reebok would have been dead, because yeah, everybody was sending those back. We did actually, well, the first thing they did, because when I heard about what they were doing, I said, well, you don't make them out of glove leather. Glove leather is just like a piece of paper. In fact, it's 0.8 of a millimeter thick. So you can imagine 0.8 of a millimeter, and then you've got to start taking the surface off so the glue will go in. So you're ending up with half a millimeter. No. So what did they do? Whoa, they lined it with nylon. Fine. You line it with nylon. Now it's stopped breathing, because leather breathes, and that's. So what do we do? Oh, they punch a lot of holes in it, so they now start breathing again. So the lesson for me was, yes, I'm a shoemaker. I know you can't make out of glove leather, but the big lesson is that marketing is so much more important than the product. And the marketing, that was it. And Jane Fonda went out and bought a pair of Reebok to use in her videos, and that's
wow.
Sigourney Weaver, she wore them at the Emmys, collecting her Emmys, and so it went on. No, Sigourney Weaver was in the Aliens film, wasn't it?
Aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, Alien.
It's incredible, Joe, how I mean, I'm born in 1972. Okay, so I don't know before. I can't remember. But if I think about the 70s when I was really little and the 80s, you had the shoes, to go to school, and you had the shoes to do the sport. You didn't use. I couldn't go with the sport shoes at school. Otherwise, the teacher would say, "Hey, what are you doing?" It was like in Italy, at least, it was like that. So, sport shoes were, for doing that activity, and that's it. Right. And then something happened, and maybe the aerobic moment was one of those moments that people just started to use sport shoes, and now sport shoes, you use it in any kind of situation. They are super cool.
Yeah, we're a fashion company now, but when we just started with the aerobic shoes in California, in Los Angeles, we're a $9 million company, and not bad. But the year later, we were a $30 million company. Then a year after that, we were a $90 million company. Then $300 million company. Then $900 million company. So within just over 4 years, we've gone from 9 million to 900 million.
Incredible.
And the growth was absolutely fantastic. And we became a woman's company because we were only small to begin with, small running company, and only runners knew us. Now we'd gone street. Now we'd become fashion, and the women owned us.
And when did you start, Joe? Did you also start, going into clothing and, hats and all the fashion world has got a lot of gadgets? Or for how long did you stick only with shoes, and then when you started to open up?
Well, it didn't take long, because the one thing you do get, if people are wearing your shoes, yes, the shoe is very distinctive, but to really get the visibility, you needed apparel, and you need to put your name on there. We set up, and this is quite some time. We set up, I think it's almost 4 aerobics. We set up the Reebok Racing Club when running was so big that there was a marathon in every city. Every city in the world almost had a marathon, and we had a lot of good runners. Not that many would actually win a marathon, but we knew they could run well. So we set up the Reebok Racing Club, and we had these vests with Reebok on, and we used to give them shoes and whatever. You stay up front of a marathon for as long as you can, and you're on television. So
run fast.
Yeah. And so I mean, that was the sort of visibility that we were into, and it really worked. And it was fantastic.
What else did you do, Joe, to drive growth? Because this incredible growth that you got in 4 years, what did it work the best? Was like guerrilla marketing? Was television? Because I mean, the internet was not there yet, I would say. Like, is it now? I mean, the iPhone is 2007, so. What did it work the most?
Well, I think that you can
word of mouth was.
Yeah, you can imagine what happened in America is that all of a sudden women owned Reebok, and it was a question of how do you keep up with the business. When we went from 300 million to 900 million, that's a big leap, and we had managed to cover the financing of that. We got a guy, Stephen Rubin. He owns JD Sports. I know you probably know JD Sports in the UK.
Yeah, sure.
That's now JD Sports are all over Europe, but he also owned a few other brands as well. And one of his companies was a sourcing company. They sourced Asco was a sourcing company out of South Korea. So he was given a credit line. So his credit line just helped the companies to grow. So that wasn't the problem. But the biggest problem was how do you get the product? How do you get enough product? And that was our problem. Wasn't advertising, wasn't promotion, wasn't financing, it was product.
Supply chain and yeah.
Unfortunately, at that time when we were growing then, Nike, who'd been growing rapidly, they'd really grown rapidly. They hit a wall. All of a sudden, they were overproduced, and these things happen in companies, and they had to pull out of, I think it was 3 factories in South Korea just when we needed it. So that was a tremendous piece of luck, because factories can't increase their production the way that the rate was demand for our shoe, and so we moved into those factories, and that's how we managed to cope. But if you think that we were growing for probably 6 or 7 years, we didn't need to market anything. It was a question of keeping up with the market, and the market was giving us all the visibility that we needed. And then we went into basketball, because the biggest problem I think that faced the Americans in particular was we've become a women's company. Are we a women's company, or are we a sports company? So it's moving from just a women's company into becoming a sports company, getting into baseball, basketball, American football, which they did quite nicely. They did indeed, but I don't think they went in depth. In fact, Paul Feynman, who actually sold the brand to Adidas in the end, he admitted not taking enough notice of soccer or football.
Awesome.
Yeah, that should have happened. They should have been, just like you look now at the top, the 2 leaders, Adidas and Nike, are heavily into football, really heavily, and that's where you get your visibility from, because we've all gone fashion. We're all very much fashion, but you've got to say, well, what drives the fashion? Are you a couture business? What is it? Design? Well, for the sports brands, it's performance. Performance drives that. Whatever performance, well, the influencers, even rap artists these days, their performance, and so you get, I would say, you get the demand and you get your influencers, and these days being an influencer is probably pays better money actually than being a sportsman. But you've got to be.
I mean, Ronaldo is making more money as an influencer than as a sportsman. That's a crazy thing. But so in those days, you didn't need to sign these huge contracts with like celebrities or like the Michael Jordan deal or this kind of things. You got the momentum, and or you also tried to go along that route in the later years.
It did come. I think Reebok signed Shaquille O'Neal in '92, but I retired in 1989.
Yeah,
it's I was well, we were a $4 billion company by then, and I was just going around the world. I had put on all the global distribution, so I'd worked and developed all the global distribution, and so my job was going around the world. I was flying into whatever airport it was, being picked up by a limousine, going to the best hotel in town, and we were dining at the best restaurants. But I'm thinking, it's like, this is not for me. And I was also hosting the pro celebrity tennis tournament in Monaco. So in Monte Carlo, we had all the people coming from Hollywood. We got Frank Sinatra. You got all the people you could mention, John Forsyth. There were so many coming in. And then we had the top tennis players, which was great because it was a fantastic period of my life. But I'm thinking, this is not really the challenge. The challenge is gone now. It's this is like keep on waving the flag, and that for me was why bother? Why bother? So I retired, and then let's say in '92, Shaquille O'Neal, he became part, and you've got a lot. Andy Roddick was a big part of the. And for these, you start paying, of course, and that's how the game works. Yes.
Joe, well, we have to finish our conversation. It was simply fantastic. I mean, I really think that you have to do a movie about your book, and I will read it like ferociously. And I suggest to everyone to read Shoemaker, Joe Foster. I was just curious, as a final question, has your life changed once you finished, running a company like that with this incredible adventure and journey? What gave you motivation after that? How is it? Because people think, all right, great exit, great money, great success, but then you cannot stay there in the swimming pool every day. So you need something that keep you alive, and that kind of adrenaline is gone. So what did you do after that?
Well, I retired from sort of the day job, and it didn't take long before the phone started ringing. Joe, what did we do? What happened on this occasion? What happened? And I was taking. I think for most of the time, I kept moving around with Reebok. It's like I sort of liken it to the Eagles and Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. And that was it. I could never leave. I brought back, and now I'm quite involved with the archive because Julie and we travel a lot, and I had a collections of all sorts of bits and pieces. So it was good. That was another good thing that Adidas did. Adidas decided that Reebok should have an archive, and so that I can say thank you Adidas for that. That was great. And so now all the stuff that I had is in the archive. It's all there, which is good because they look after it. It's in air-conditioned places. So I say I've continued to be with Reebok, and now of course they've just sold. Adidas have sold this now to ABG, Authentic Brands Group, and Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq owns 15% of that. And he's been the biggest man pushing this. He's a big man. He's 7 foot and he's incredible. But he's been pushing it. But Shaq loves the brand, and I think now we're going to see a big leap in Reebok. Okay. It's going to be fantastic because he loves it. And the brand is a brand to love, and it's a good brand, and everybody seems to like it. I talk to a lot of people, and I say, yeah, I remember when I had my first pumps. I used to pump them up. Great, fantastic. And so a lot of people are waiting for this to happen again, and it will. And so I'm going to be busy on that. Plus, now we're trying to get Shoemaker to become a bestseller in America. So fantastic. That's the journey.
It will be. I'm sure about it, Joe. And I was a professional table tennis player when I was young, and I was using Reebok. When I started, I remember I had my Reebok because I think you did some volleyball Reebok or something like that. So it was very good for table tennis, and I was using Reebok. Wow, fantastic. Joe, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, and an honor. Shoemaker, Joe Foster. I will definitely read it, and I really recommend it. Thank you so much, Joe. I'll see you soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jose.